All right, horns up, talking Texas. Nick Kreider, Alex Tassopoulos doing a duo show today. No Josh Fisher, no Quan Cosby. But hey, we're holding down the fort. Happy Yom Kippur to everyone who celebrated, our Jewish friends. Also, happy OU week. We handled business pretty well. I think my score prediction for this game was 34-10. Josh's was changed from 27-3, and he ended up going 31-3. Toss, you're pretty close too. We were all in the same ballpark, right?
Yeah, I think I had 38-10, which, if Burt hits that field goal before the end of the first half, it's 37-3
Yeah.
instead of 34-3. So we would have liked to have seen that happen, especially because he got two looks at it. He basically
I
went 0
know.
for 2 right before half, but it's tough when you've only kicked 3 field goals, and then have to step up in one of the biggest rivalry games in college football and rip it. And we obviously saw the OU kicker miss as well, but the defense was the big story in this one, man. They were fantastic. It was great to see, in Venables' tenure as the head coach for the Oklahoma Sooners, 2 of the 3 years, they've had that bird's eye view in the second half where you can only see the burnt orange color at the Cotton Bowl because all of the Sooner fans have left already because the game was over so quickly. And 2 of the most dominant wins, not only in the last 20 years with this rivalry, but both quarterbacked by Quinn Ewers for the Horns, and really important for this rivalry because I was just looking like at the stats, and obviously everybody was talking about them last week. Since 2000, it's still 9-16 in favor of Oklahoma. Like, all these wins matter. We need to surpass them in that category. And we did a great job on Saturday, and Sark got to eat his first corn dog, which was cool.
Yeah. I mean, to throw some stats at you really quickly, uh, Horns 6-0 for the first time since 2009. For me, that's kind of hard to believe. It's been that long, but I mean, we have to remember that there was such a tough stretch after the Mac Brown era
Yeah.
when Charlie Strong came in, then when Tom Herman came in, and then we started off slow with Sark, but first 6-0 start, I'll repeat, since 2009. So we're checking off a lot of firsts this season, right? First time that we're number one, first time being able to put up these type of numbers.
Yeah.
Um, this is also the first time this year that we've trailed at all in a game. So we've trailed 3.5 minutes all year long, and it was basically when OU had their first quarter field goal against us. Obviously, we've talked about this on many shows before. Quinn and the offense kind of starting off flat, taking a little bit to get going, and we saw that to be the case in this game as well.
Yeah.
People thought that the under was a lock, and the under ultimately did hit. People were calling for Arch Manning at the watch party that we were at, already in the first quarter, which let's pump the brakes a little bit. But in that whole first quarter, we didn't have a first down. So it was one of those scary situations where it's like, all right, how long is the leash actually going to be for Quinn? And me and Josh talked about it. The leash is long, but there still is a leash, right? Like
Right.
in that game where it's a
Right.
must win. And these teams are not scared of pulling the plug, because we saw that happen in 2021
Right.
when Rattler, supposed to be their guy, can't get it done against Texas in the first half, and they replace him with Caleb Williams, who ends up torching us and winning the starting job, and then obviously becoming the player that he is, transferring over to USC, number 1 overall pick, now in the NFL, had a great game this last weekend. But in this type of rivalry game where this game matters more than any other game that you've seen so far in your schedule, it does not matter. It's about winning the game,
Right.
and ultimately it's great that we didn't have to make that decision, right? Quinn obviously figured it out. I still think from a stat perspective, if you look at the line that he had, it wasn't, the most sexy. But this is to be expected, right? He missed 2.5 games.
Yeah.
You know, Chalk it up to jitters. Maybe he's still not 100%. I mean, it's not like the abdomen heals, in a matter of a couple of weeks. Like that could take, a couple of months. So
Right.
um, there was a couple of, I'm sure you feel the same way. He took some unnecessary hits, I feel like, um, running the ball a couple times when that's like definitely not his game, stepping out of the pocket, trying to do a little bit too much. But, you know, ultimately, like you said, it was highlighted by the defense. When you have a defense like that, you don't have to play out of this world football. You don't have to play to a Heisman level. You just have to manage the game, control the clock, and take advantage of the situations that your defense gives you. And to jump on that, I mean, every single one of those guys is playing out of their minds, led by obviously Anthony Hill having a huge game.
He's an All-American. He's an All-American. He is.
All-American. I was literally last night just counting on the roster how many first rounders I think we have. Not in this year's draft, but just in drafts to come on this roster. And I think with confidence, I think between 7 and 9 with like locked in. Like, and obviously guys can move up there, having breakout games and having breakout seasons, some of the freshmen and sophomores that we really haven't heard about yet.
You want me to give a guess who I think it could be real quick?
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Obviously Quinn, of course, Kelvin Banks,
Yep.
Cam Robinson.
I didn't have him in there. No.
Okay.
But he could work his way in there.
The guy Ryan Wingo, our true freshman wide receiver,
Yep.
I imagine you have in there. Isaiah Bond, our receiver who went down, who will be day-to-day this week, and hopefully he's fully recovered and playing for the Georgia game. We'll need him.
We're at 4.
Gunnar Helm, who as a tight end, you didn't have him in there?
I don't know if I consider him a number 1 or a first round guy yet.
Maybe not.
A lot more.
I mean,
tight ends are tough to sneak into the first round. You really have to be something special. You have to be a guy that's like projected to go in the first round for not just 1 year, for multiple years.
Like Loveland for Michigan. But I'll tell you what, whoever ends up drafting Gunnar Helm is getting a great player. And he demonstrated once again that he can block, but he can also make big plays. I mean, that contested catch on the wide receiver pass, he tried the hurdle again. Like, I wish that wasn't his signature move, because eventually it'll catch up with you. That's a big body hitting the ground when they get you in the air like that. But he was fantastic, and he obviously has a great rapport with Quinn. Okay, so Anthony Hill.
Collins. Yeah, well, let's finish offense real quick, because I have 2 more on offense.
2 more on offense.
Well, I mean, you haven't mentioned one of them that's like, it's obvious, but like, we just didn't play this game.
Oh, Arch Manning. Yeah.
Arch Manning. And then DJ Campbell.
Okay. Yeah.
So that right there is 6 just on offense alone. And then you mentioned Gunnar Helm, who could work his way in there. So that would be 7, right? And
right.
Who knows? There's other offensive linemen in here that could work their way in the mix that are just not playing yet, or that are, too young.
Yeah. And then Hill and Simmons. Yeah.
Hill and Simmons make, I guess 9, 8 and 9. And then, is Jahdae Barron going to work his way in there eventually? He's been climbing up the ladder board, so that makes it 10. Makuba's a guy that's been really,
safety's tough to get first round grade, but I'm with you, man. It's really, really impressive. And I mean, I mentioned he's an All-American to me. The play where he got into the pocket, Hawkins steps up. This was at the end of the first half, and he pursues him, comes from behind, makes a great tackle. Our guys are tackling with intent to make the ball carrier fumble every single time. They are looking for the ball. They're looking for that pocket, and they are attacking it. He was aggressive there. He got the strip. We ended up scoring on the other side. He was fantastic in this game. I mean, a phenomenal game. I know Josh would, tell us what his PFF grade is. Like, I'm sure it was off the charts, and from an eye test, it was off the charts as well. The coaches are really happy with him for sure.
Yeah, I saw a really great highlight too, on one of his sacks that he got, where they lined him up on the outside opposite of Colin Simmons. And essentially it's like, pick your poison, who's going to get after you.
I remember that play. Yeah.
Both of them beat their blockers, and it could have been either of them who got that sack, but it ended up being Hill. So that's quite the tandem right there. I mean, look, we always refer to these powerhouse teams in the Natty, right? The Bamas, the LSUs, the Georgias, right? Those teams that have really put a stamp into the record books of being guys that have first round talent all over the place. They're deep. Yeah. And you look back at the NFL and you're like, that guy was on that Georgia team. That guy was on the LSU team. That guy was on that Bama team, right? Like, you see it all over the place. And this could be, the makings of that type of Texas team with these 2 guys leading the charge.
Yeah, definitely. And we have another huge test this upcoming weekend. And I know, a lot of Ducks fans were complaining that why don't they have the number 1 ranking, because they had an impressive victory against the Buckeyes in Eugene this past weekend. And look, Texas is playing Georgia. they're playing it at DKR. It's going to be game day. Like, they want the Texas
Right.
Longhorns to be ranked
Of
number one, and we've
course.
done nothing to deserve anything but the number one ranking. So
Right.
it was an
Exactly.
impressive win for them. And look, Dylan Gabriel, like Heisman stock up big time in a way that Quinn Ewers was not able to kind of change and reframe that narrative for him. But he was coming back from the injury, and you saw that. I mean, sloppiest game he's played all season, no doubt. Just from an execution standpoint of missing throws that he was making prior to the injury. Multiple of those two drives that we got stopped on, the first two drives we had, third and long. Yes, you don't want to be in that position, but he had guys wide open. Bond on deep ball. I think it was DeAndre Moore across the middle, and he sailed it over his head, right? And that ended up with
Yep.
the interception. And Bond, he was about 5 yards short. Some of that was because of the pass rush, but he just wasn't as accurate and as it's not that he wasn't prepared. I just think it was a mental thing. Like you said, he took too many hits. I think a lot of that is because he was indecisive about when he wanted to run. And when you run too late, then the defense has that much more time to make a decision and get to you that much quicker. So
Mhm.
he did run for that touchdown at the end, which I think was nice. And I think that was a really good confidence booster. He took a lick on that play, which I was like, ooh, I don't know if we want to, it's about to be 34-3. Do we need to take that hit right there? But
Right.
there were a lot of things that we did really well. Our return game was great in this. Special teams, besides Burt missing that field goal, I thought did a great job.
Hey, Bolden might be the player of the game here, right? Obviously,
Yeah,
we have Trey Wisner who fumbles that ball into the end zone, and Bolden comes around, I think covers 55 yards just on that
crazy.
play alone of ground to recover that in the end zone for a touchdown. Obviously, if that rolls out a little bit more, that's a touchback going, the other way around. And who knows, momentum swing for OU that could change a lot of things in that game.
It was
But Bolden
7-3.
also,
Yeah,
yeah, exactly. And Bolden also had a lot of great plays on special teams. I've been calling for special teams explosive plays, and he made some great
you
plays.
you almost got your house call. He
I
was
know.
he was like 15 yards short, but
Yeah, real close. But
yeah,
hey, those are those just plays that are electric that really jump starts the team and gets momentum back in your corner. Nothing like special teams to really just fire people up. But
for sure.
I'm looking at our schedule and I'm just looking at the score of all of our games, right? I'll just read them to you. So 52-0, 31-12, 56-7, 51-3, 35-13, and obviously 34-3 after this week. So the most points we've let up so far this season, 13. A couple weeks ago against Mississippi State. Most points we have scored this season, 56. Every game this season, we've scored at least over 30 points, 31 being our lowest against Michigan, who's a good defense, but still hanging up a good number on them. I'm looking at Michigan's team last year, who won the national championship, right? Through 6 games. Their scores were 30-3, 35-7, 31-6, 31-7, 45-7, and 52-10. It already be 10 points is the most points they've let up, around the same number as 13, but they also obviously scored over 30 points in every single one of those games, barely by some of them. We're already having more of an impressive season than what Michigan
Well,
did last year. And
yeah,
and
that's
not to mention as well, 2 really big ranked games.
right.
So one against OU, one against Michigan. Their opponents last season were East Carolina, UNLV, Bowling Green, Rutgers, Nebraska, and Minnesota through their first 6 games. And then obviously this season got a little bit more challenging. And that's when they also started to, have a little bit closer games against Ohio State, against Penn State, against even Maryland. They had a close game. But look, these teams that go on and win these championships, like you want to look back and see how many, big wins they had. And it's a trend, like you see that a lot in these big powerhouse national champion teams.
Yeah, definitely. And I think it was Maryland actually gave them a tough run
Yep.
for their money late in the season. I
Yep.
remember that game. I think they might have scored like 28 points or something like that, 26, 28, something like that.
Yep.
Um, I will
I mean,
say,
and the same trend goes for the 2022 Georgia team too. I mean, they were waxing teams all
right,
season long.
right.
So like that's the thing. If you want to be a national champion, you're not playing close games, until you
Yeah.
get to the more important games, right? Like you're making it resounding every single time.
Yeah. And I think we have to be honest about this game too. As evaluators, I'm not going to say much about the quarterback position. Like I could talk about Hawkins's play, but they had the opportunity. You talked about how in years prior they moved off of their starting quarterback and made a change. Like they could have made a change to Jackson Arnold or even Casey Thompson in this game, and they decided not to, which I think is telling potentially to the relationship that Jackson Arnold has maybe with Coach Venables, or just how well he's been able to manage the offense thus far. So they keep the freshman quarterback in, but their receiving core was severely depleted. And look, this guy is not, he wants to run the ball first. He made a lot of mistakes. He looked like a true freshman in this game. Every time he should have thrown the ball away, he held on to it. Every time he threw the ball away, he should have tried to make a play downfield because it was fourth down. Like, it's 4th and 3. You don't throw the ball away. That's when you throw it downfield and force a throw, because otherwise it's a turnover on downs and we're going the other way. If you're about to get,
if it's a pick, you're giving yards, you're taking away yards from the defense.
Absolutely. I rewatched a lot of the plays, and the sack where he lost like 18 yards, Michael Taft got in the back. Like, it was an HB screen. All he has to do is throw it at the running back's feet. Like, the throw was there to at least keep them with a no gain. And of course he holds on to the ball. There was that other play where he pump faked. Like, if you're getting swallowed all game, you don't pump fake when when you drop back. You either you play decisive and you make the defense make a play. And I felt like, he did everything wrong in that game for the most part, outside of a couple of nice throws where it's like, okay, you see the talent when he can throw well on the move, and he's fast, obviously, but he fumbled twice in the first half, which is not something you want your freshman quarterback to see. All that to say, this is not the same offense that we'll see against Georgia. Like, this is a much bigger test. I'd be surprised if we hold them to 3 points. I'd be surprised if we hold them to 10 points. This is an offense. Carson Beck threw 2 picks this past weekend, but he threw for 450 yards. They came back in that Alabama game. He threw for 400 plus in that game. Like, their offense can do stuff. They have a quarterback who, for a lot of draft profilers, is still the number 1 QB. And it's not going to look the same. So we're going to get a real test, especially offensively. But the OU defense, like, the first quarter of this game went exactly as we said it had to go for them. We were going 3 and out. They were stopping us on defense. Our defense had to play on the field a lot. I felt like that's why that Silas Bolden play was so big, was because if they had gotten the ball back, like, our defense could have been kind of gassed at that point. They had been out there a lot, and it was important that we got that score. And then I felt like in that second quarter, we really settled in, and I think 10 plus of the minutes were our offense with the ball, which made a huge difference going into the second half. But yeah, it was nice to see us come from behind for a win. It was nice to see us only get shaken from our game plan for 1 quarter. Like, in Sark's teams past, it's been a full half, right, where things haven't gone our way, and then we kind of flip it. We've never really played like 4 quarters of a bad game as we've been good with Sark. We've only played a half of a bad game. And now I feel like we played a quarter of a bad game, and that was only on offense because our defense was really good in the first quarter. So we certainly have the makings of a championship team. We have to continue to prepare like we're a championship team. We're dealt I mentioned the Isaiah Bond injury. We're dealt a tough blow from the safety position. Derek Williams is going to be out for the season. He had season-ending surgery, Sark said, and he was one of the guys that forced the fumble on Michael Hawkins in this game. I think we have good depth in the defensive backfield, so I'm excited to see who can replace him. But of course, it's a shame that he's not going to be able to be a part of this team on the field for the rest of the season because he was playing well.
Yeah, you never want to see critical playmakers, going down for the season, especially when you're about to face your biggest test of the season in Georgia. I mean, this is the game that everyone's circled on their calendar to be the one right here, right? The winner of this game, potentially winning the SEC, potentially winning the national championship. So, Georgia's still playing for quite a lot, even though they have one loss under their belt. I mean, if
you could argue they're playing for even more, honestly.
Exactly. But Texas is still favored in this game. That flipped from the beginning opening in the year line. And we're a 3.5 point favorite at home now against this Georgia team. I mean, obviously so much has shaken up in college football since the beginning of the season. So this is to be expected. But, if we end up winning this game, the road is pretty clear for the most part to locking up a spot. I mean, obviously we can't take Vanderbilt lightly. We've seen what they've been able to do. They've had a great resurgent season. Florida should be a gimme. Arkansas always plays us well, going to Fayetteville. Kentucky's been really, pesky this season, although that one's at DKR. And then don't look now, but Texas A&M's rolling. They take down the number 9 team Mizzou this weekend, and now they're number 14 in the nation, and they've got a pretty easy schedule going forward. We're one of the last 2 ranked games that they have left. They've got LSU, and then they've got us to end the season. So that game at the end of the season on, November 30th could have a lot of implications in just the world of college
Absolutely.
football.
Yeah,
I
I
mean,
mean,
if foreseeably we win out, we're still number one, right? And they win out, they're a top 10 team for sure.
uh,
Maybe a top five team.
undoubtedly, their only loss on the season, yes, it was at home, but it was week 1 against Notre Dame, who's the 12th team in the nation, who
Right.
after that game has at
And they
least
had
in
a
the
different
last 2
quarterback.
weeks has dominated. Like,
They had a different quarterback too.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, Notre Dame has been taking care of business, so that just makes I mean, they beat Stanford 49-7. They beat the brakes off of them. That just makes A&M look even better. And with this other quarterback who's mobile, I mean, he's playing really good football right now. So that's going to be a tremendous test, but 1 week at a time. Yeah, I mean, all of these games are really interesting. What do you think about the rankings? Like Georgia, who we're facing, is number 5, and Alabama's number 7, two ranks behind them.
I mean,
It's
I thought that they were going to throw Georgia at 4 this week, but
mm,
I guess they didn't. They didn't move. Um, but yeah, I mean, I don't know.
Penn State
It's
at
so
3. They won a really close game against
yeah.
USC, like
I don't
really
I don't
close.
love I don't love Penn State moving up because I feel like they could have easily lost that game and fallen way back.
Sure.
Win's a win. Oregon is right there at 2. They should be at 2. They should not be at 1 though. They didn't have a resounding win against Ohio State. They played a really close game, right? And to your point, we didn't do anything wrong to lose our number 1 spot, So, um, yeah, I mean, clearly it's just the AP. Obviously, what matters most at the end of the year is the college football playoff rankings. So this will be shaken up quite a bit, I feel like. But yeah, 1, 5, 4, it doesn't matter. I mean, this
Yeah.
game is a big game no matter what. It's circled on everyone's calendars. A lot of people are excited to be in Austin for that game. A lot going on in Austin that week too. This weekend with F1 coming to town. Of course, you got another week of ACL, and then we've got Texas, Georgia.
Yeah, interesting little thing. 2 Big 12 teams still undefeated. BYU and Iowa State. And obviously BYU was supposed to be a good team. Kansas State was the real darling and Utah as well. And Utah's 4-2. K-State's 5-1, and they had a good win against Colorado. But I don't think many people expected BYU and Iowa State to be at the top of that conference right now. And Iowa State's the number 9 team in the nation. Really impressive. I just like checking in on our Big 12 former
Yeah.
brethren just to see what's going on there, because
Well, I mean,
a lot of
whoever
those
wins
teams
that
missed some way.
conference is whoever wins that conference is getting a first round bye
Yeah,
in
yeah.
the college football playoff, and they're going to be a top 4 team in that format. So I mean, Iowa State, this could be their best chance they've ever had to locking something up. And same thing with BYU. I mean, those two teams are neck and neck when it comes to how well they're playing and where they're at in the eyes of college football. But
Yeah.
yeah, I mean, the season's getting really interesting. Obviously, our boy Ashton Genty's still doing his thing at Boise State. We've sung his praises all season long. I mean, what he's been able to do on the ground is incredible. And the way I see it too, it's not like he's this type of running back that's just going through gaping holes because his O-line has just been out of this world, right? Where, you've seen that in years past with like Ohio State running backs and Georgia running backs, and not to discredit them, they're still talented. But what Ashton Genty does on the ground after the tackle or between the tackles or after contact, like he just bounces off guys like crazy. He has great moves, stiff arms, and just like knows how to keep his legs turning. And it's one of the most fun things to watch in all of college football.
Yeah, I texted the two of you and Josh, that Ashton Janty after contact has the second most yards behind Ashton Janty, period, in the Mountain West from a rushing standpoint. So him after contact is ahead of any other rusher in the conference, which is just incredibly impressive.
I mean,
And
just to put it in perspective for you, I mean, he's through their what's the record right now? They're 5-1.
yeah,
So six games this season, right? This kid's already rushed for 1,248 yards.
yeah, it's ridiculous. I mean, in my opinion, and I think most people's opinion, it's his to lose now, the Heisman Award. As I mentioned, Dylan Gabriel, I think for me, if we were doing our five guys, like he's gotten into that mix now, definitely. Travis Hunter, he's still there. I mean, hopefully he plays next week. He was injured and went down in that Kansas State game and didn't play in the second half, but he'd still be in the mix for me, certainly.
Yep.
And then, I mean, Cam Ward, right? Because that team is the number 6 team in the country. His numbers are really good. And I mean, the rest of their schedule now, with a couple of teams falling off, like Louisville not being a ranked team anymore, or Florida State, Georgia Tech is scrappy, and
Oh,
Haynes
that's
King had a
tough.
nice win at the end of the season, he had a nice like 60+ yard run to win their game this past week, and it feels like a guarantee almost that Miami should be one of those teams in the college football playoff. And if they stay where they're at, number 6 right now, and potentially could go even higher,
Yeah.
Cam Ward will be in the mix as well. He'll get an invite. He'll get an invite for sure.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean,
I don't
especially if they're undefeated and he's playing the way he is. It's a big
anyone
set.
anyone else really.
Milroe, I mean,
Yeah,
obviously he's still going to be in the mix, especially if Bama, is right there.
definitely.
I don't know if our guy Quinn's going to be able to get it. I feel like he's not
It's
having
tough.
big enough games, and missing 2.5 games to Arch. Arch already having better stats than him through this point in the season. Yeah, I don't know if he's gonna be able to get it, which is fine. I'd rather win the Natty. I'm sure Vince Young will tell you the exact same thing. He'd rather win the Natty than win the Heisman the year that he lost to Reggie.
Certainly. Maybe Iowa's running back, Caleb Johnson, their running back is really good. And I think he's, in my opinion, clearly the RB2 in the nation behind Janty.
Yeah.
And he had a really impressive week. But yeah, I mean,
no, it's going to be hard to take it away from this kid. I mean, 126 carries, 1,248 yards, averaging 9.9 yards a carry, and 17 touchdowns already on the ground, 1 receiving. So 18 total touchdowns through 6 games. I mean, this is never seen anything like this.
Well, and any of the other, like Trey Harris, the wide receiver for Ole Miss, had a good shot at like cementing himself this past week against LSU as like the number 1 wide receiver in college football. He got hurt, didn't play in the second half. He also, did you see what they were doing after they scored touchdowns? They like have a basket and they dunk. So like,
Oh, really?
when Texas gets a turnover, we have our turnover skewer, right? And we put
Yep,
the sword through the football at the kebab. They have like a basket, and after he scored a unbelievable snag touchdown against LSU in Death Valley in front of Shaq, he missed the dunk on the hoop. Yeah, and it's not a 10-foot hoop. It's like it's like an 8-foot, like put water in it, put it in the backyard type of thing.
That's bad.
Yeah, it was bad.
Not
but
great.
Yeah, we'll get back together with Josh and Quan later this week, potentially with a guest to preview the Georgia game. And other than that, Nick, you got anything else?
Yeah, get your horns up because we're 6-0 and still the number 1 team in the nation.
And we've covered every week. Great teams covered, baby.
Well, besides the Mississippi State game, but that was a 35 and a point. 35 and a half.
What did we miss on that one? What was the final spread?
It was the final score was 35-13, and I think the spread was 35 and a half. So
that's tough.
It's a tough one. Yep.
But this spread moved on game day to -17, and
this spread started off 14 and a half, and it moved 2.5 points, which is quite a bit in the betting world. So 17 points. So the Horns had to cover 17 points against the number 18 team in the nation, a big rival.
We did it easily.
Yep.
Love it.
So, love it. Hook 'em.
Peace.